Hello everyone, I'm the Comics Kid 2099, and since it is Saturday, that means I am here to talk about an episode of a superhero animated series. And today I will be talking about an episode of Batman the Animated Series titled I've Got a Batman in My Basement. Remember how I said that The Underdwellers was the worst episode of this series? Well, I take it back. While I still don't think very fondly of that episode, it is head and shoulders above this episode. But first, maybe I should quickly paraphrase what all happened in this episode, in case you didn't see it. We start with some goons stealing a diamond egg or something. Batman catches them, but then an evil vulture stops Batman from stopping them. Then we scoot over to a couple of annoying kids being kinda picked on by another pair of annoying kids. Sherman and Roberta are like the Encyclopedia Brown of the Batman universe, I guess, since they're like 8 years old and they think they can solve mysteries at this stage in their life, when they should be giving their lunch money to Eddie Haskell 1 and 2. These kids see the evil vulture, and then they follow it into a warehouse. They find out that the Penguin is the leader of the two goons, and then Batman comes in and basically messes everything up. He gets gassed by what I can only assume is a super mutant gas, since Penguin says the effects will last for an entire week. I don't know what Penguin is doing stealing diamond eggs when, with that gas, he could be taking over small countries. Batman is out cold, so naturally Sherman and Roberta take him to Sherman's house. Then the Penguin finds where Sherman lives, and the episode becomes a truncated version of Home Alone, where Sherman and his pals somehow make fools out of all of these adults. Which, now that I think of it, I guess that wouldn't be too hard, but it's still pretty hard to swallow when you're watching the episode. Batman wakes up, fights the Penguin with a screwdriver, and then Sherman's mom comes home. The end. Okay. Sometimes something will be bad, and I'll say the premise is okay, but the execution is where it fails. And that is not what is going on here. Even the premise is just really dumb. It feels like someone from on high said that we needed an episode that exists to tell kids, even you can be a hero. Look, Sherman, who is a skinny little preteen, he was able to help Batman, the greatest hero in the world. And I guess that's a good message to send to kids, but in the context of this world, I just find myself unable to get into this episode because the very idea of a preteen being more effective than Batman just doesn't work for me. And I'm usually able to set aside my preconceptions of what is, air quotes, realistic in pursuit of a story. But this I cannot get behind. Even if everything else in this episode was fantastic, I'd still question the premise of an untrained kid being able to help Batman defeat one of his enemies, even one as kind of useless as the Penguin. And yeah, there are times when this does happen. The very concept of Robin is based in this premise. Batman needs a partner, so he gets a little kid who is invaluable to his war on crime. And then in Be a Clown, Jordan is able to help Batman escape from the water tank that the Joker had him put into. But Batman was still doing everything else in that episode. Here, Batman is really just a bystander who gets taken out like a nameless red shirt, and then this becomes Sherman the Animated Series for the rest of the episode. I don't really think I have much more to say about Sherman, so I'll move on real quick to the Penguin. As you probably guessed, I'm not really a hardcore Penguin fan if I'm being honest. He's okay, but I don't think he's an A-list villain. I've always thought he worked better as a mob boss who Batman can occasionally get information from, but never as a full-on villain who is in the center of any story. Here, he's not that, so I'm not really digging him here. He's really just a Z-level bank robber, except that he's too inept to actually pull the job himself. And let's be honest, even if the Penguin was being portrayed exactly as I would like to see him, as a mob boss, we still wouldn't need him in this series because we've already got Boss Thorne, who incidentally wasn't actually a full-on gangster in the comics, but was actually a corrupt politician. So that makes this version of the Penguin not only goofy and a little nonsensical, but kinda pointless and redundant. And what is really going on with the Penguin squawking like a dying cow? I get that he did that in the 1960s live-action series, and I'm sure he's done that in some of the comic books from around that time, but this is not the 1960s. I'm not even that far into reviewing this series, but already in the episodes I've seen, this show has gone out of its way to make characters previously seen as goofy and laughable into more serious, legitimate threats. And I'm not here to make fun of or bash the 1960s Batman. I actually like that version of Batman as well. What I am not really down for is when one version of Batman then starts leaking into another. I.e., I love The Dark Knight Returns, but I submit that the big reason so many people had issue with the sequel, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, is because it is nothing like The Dark Knight Returns, and really feels more like a parody of the 1960s Batman than a full-on sequel to The Dark Knight Returns. If the animated series is trying to go for good storytelling and doesn't want people to laugh at the frankly dumb villains, then they should have tried a lot harder on the Penguin. Or, better yet, they should have not used the Penguin. This guy really just feels like the exact same version of the character that Burgess Meredith played, minus the really insane over-the-top stuff like flying umbrella rockets. Heck, an evil vulture that does everything the Penguin wants him to do, even that sounds like it comes right out of the 1960s. Overall, this episode feels like the creators needed to get an episode out there, but they also felt like they needed a break. So they just kinda half-butted this one, and then in the following episode, they were back in rare form. And maybe that's a little mean-spirited. I don't want to say that anyone, anywhere, is deliberately not giving their all on a project. But when you watch this episode, and then you watch some of the other episodes in the series, it certainly seems like the same people weren't working on it, or if they were, they just weren't trying very hard. In any case, I come away from this episode thinking that I'm probably never going to watch this episode again. That's how bad it really is. I hope, negative attitude toward this episode aside, that you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you will come back next week to hear me talk about the Legion of Superheroes cartoon a little bit. And in 2 weeks, I'll be here once again to talk about another episode of Batman the Animated Series. But until then, I encourage you to come back every day throughout the week to hear and watch me do some other kinds of videos. Until then, have a great day.